tribute to the state and got away with it. Some cases they were more deeply engaged with the Mughal state and they reaped the benefit of that. This idea would have is very important. I mean, I'm not basically speaking, I'm not a historian. And when I read the histories of India's freedom struggle and the division of India, I am pained sometimes to see how much the main actors were caught in this idea of the nation state. Because all sides believe that their liberation remained in European style nation state. Unless we duplicate Europe's nation state, we will never make it in the world. There was no sense of proportion. I mean, many of the freedoms which the Muslim League wanted, many demanded to remain in Indian Union, actually were less than what many of our chieftains of our states now enjoy, rightly or wrongly. We were not willing with this because both sides were committed to this idea of the nation state. They never took seriously Tagore's notorious comment that the attempt to build a nation state in India is like Switzerland trying to build a navy.
I quite agree with you, Professor Nandy. What you say, instrumentalize the idea of nation state.
And humanize it,
and humanize it. I have an equally instrumental conception of nation state, contemporary, and for the following reasons. The more I argue amorphous becomes capital, and the more amorphous becomes the operation of empire, Alahard Negri's empire rather than imperialism, the more necessary becomes the site of resistance to it, as, for example, in the case of nation state. That's one thing. The second, my argument in this book that is coming, I told you, is that the very idea of nation, millat, in Arabic version, or nation state, dola, keshvar, these are all inventions, in fact, by the poet and the literate.
Yes.
We have a fantastic line by Arif Ghazvini, a distinguished poet of the late 19th, early 20th century, whom actually Tagore met, when Tagore went to Iran, met and conversed with. He said that before my poetry, not 1 out of 10 Iranian knew what millat, nation, was. I mean, he boasted, as for the case of how nationalistic is my poetry, but he is true in more than one sense, because he invented the idea of nation and millat and nation state. It became, when the poet, the proverbial Persian poet, exits the court and European imperialism starts, usually what happens in our part of the world, when, for example, the Safavids come to power and they have no use for Persian poets, they just get on their horse or donkey, whatever, and come to India and find another court, and they're employed in that court. In 16th century, we have a bizarre situation in Iran, that poets and prose stylists go west, come to India, and theologians and jurists and legal scholars from Lebanon and Syria come to Iran. They scarce spoke Persian. Proverbially, they are known, they got in their donkey, and they only knew one phrase, Esfahan Kojas, where is Esfahan? And they just came towards Iran until they got to it. What happens in the course of European imperialism? Persian poets exit the court, but there is no other court to go to sell their Persian poetry. Europeans had their own poets and prose stylists. So they are left between two courts. One court is defeated, the other court doesn't have any use for them. They begin conceptually, emotively to conceptualize the idea of the people, the nation, etc. That becomes their new home and the new habitat. Now, going back to the question of instrumentality of the nation state, I wonder if the question of human imagination, our ability to talk, our ability to think, is more possible within authoritarian empires than it is within totalitarian nation states. I live in the heart of an empire, and I'm free. I can say whatever I want. I mean, they just ignore me. But the fact of the matter is that I'm free to say whatever I want. But if I were to step in Iran, it would be one-way ticket. So totalitarian nation-state has less tolerance for my way of critical thinking than a Amorphous empire. The Amorphous empire, they tell me all they listen to your eavesdrop to your phone calls, or read your emails, or they're on your Facebook, and I couldn't care less. As I always say, I wish they read what I say and do as I say. So, beyond instrumentalization of the nation-state, I wonder if, and without romanticizing empire as the site of our future, I wonder if subnational categories, Professor Nandy, at local levels, to what degree those subnational levels, communal gatherings, etc., can be conducive to a form of citizenship, to a form of contemporary living, without lending itself to massive repressive totalitarian tendencies, because the state, as you know, has a self-totalizing tendency across the board.
Yes. I mean, because the states think that their survival depends on this totalization. Many of the pathologies of India that you see around you come, for example, just to give you one instance, the justification for untouchability was found in Manu Samhita. But Manu Samhita, I found out, was one of the texts for the Hindus till the East India Company looked for a text which will serve as a Bible of the Hindus so that they can control it, they can refer to it. They can set up the new rules of the game without antagonizing the Hindus. So one knows the name of the person who said Manu Samhita is the right. And yet, in Bengal itself, some 30, 40 years after that, I still find people arguing publicly on the basis of other texts, texts, against some of the practices, criticizing traditions on the basis. But this acceptance of the state.
Anytime you wish, we can move to Q&A.
Acceptance of the state gives it a certain stature. And it becomes ultimately the authoritative text for the
Of course. I think we shouldn't abuse your gracious patience. And if Professor Gopal, if anyone wants to join the conversation.
Yes.
Actually, I have a small question. That what are your views about the situation where state manipulates an obvious contradiction or issue after a deliberate redirection to serve its ends? Because here it's not a simple case of hiding poverty behind a billboard, but rather of the imagination of the state. It's of hiding the reality and constructing an appearance for global exchange. Peace summits regarding the ground situations of conflict zones around the globe and how the state uses media to disseminate and diffuse this constructed appearance, and the use of universal values like global democracy, human rights to justify an unjustified rule, to justify wars. And what are your views about that?